All right, so before I get into some of the technical analysis, the motivation behind this project is I came into a Buccaneer 18. It is a fractional sloop racing dinghy. It's a very fast boat. It's not the best boat to learn on. And it has a bunch of issues that made it a challenge for me. I wanted to keep a boat at the dock, be able to jump into it and go when I want. I could have built a tent to keep the rainwater out, but I didn't bother because it's an old boat from the late 70s and there are scuppers right through the bottom of the hull, which when you're ripping along and up on plane, you can open those up and they will drain all the water out. But that was never a condition that I found myself in. So every time I went to use the boat, it was completely full of water. I'd spend a half hour bailing it out before I could actually take it out. There were a handful of other things to where this just wasn't ultimately the right boat for me, at least to learn on and start with. I want some interior dry space, and the only covered space is kind of up here in the bow. It's a little bit like splunking. It's like a 10 by 8 hatch that you have to kind of crawl through, which you have to do because this forestay runs through a PVC pipe that the jib is on, and you have to feed that line through here and then back and latch it to an attach point that's right here. This 24-foot tall mast is a little bit cumbersome to get up and get down by yourself. It's very doable, but it's a little bit awkward, and I didn't really want to have to build a device or do anything like that. But now that I have a different boat and I'm enjoying that, I'm looking back at this one and thinking what else I could do with it. So still one of the challenges that I have is it's a good, almost an hour of rigging and de-rigging, plus launching the boat and all of the other stuff. So it's kind of unreasonable to trailer the boat somewhere and go out in what my life is today. So I've spent a lot of time learning about sailboat design, really focusing on the physics of sailing and the sail plan at the moment, because that's the thing I want to change the most about this boat. And I'm thinking about rebuilding this boat, refitting it into a cat catch. A lot of what I learned was somewhat inconsistent. So I've spent time analyzing existing boat designs and trying to map that back into what I've learned to at least understand how to design a boat. So that's what I've done here. Looking at the Buccaneer, it's got the jib and it's got a mainsail. And using just basic geometry to find the centroid of these triangles, find the jib's center of effort is about here, the mainsail center of effort is about here, and then using the relative size of each of these sails to find a place along this line that's proportional to the size of each sail, put the overall center of effort of the boat right about there, favoring the mainsail a little bit. It's a bit bigger. I didn't bother calculating the center of lateral resistance, but it is effectively the centroid of the boat hull, the swing keel, and the rudder, all the stuff that's underwater. And on most boats, it's right about here. It's probably a little bit higher up, but in the X position, which is really all I'm kind of focused on at the moment, it's right about at the back of the centerboard is usually where it is. So here we can see, if I extend these lines out parallel, we can see the center of lateral resistance is about a foot behind the center of effort that I calculated. Now the boat is going to pivot in the X direction around the center of lateral resistance. So with the center of effort being in front of it, if the wind is blowing into the screen, what we're going to see is the boat is going to fall off of the wind, which is the exact opposite of how boats are typically designed. This has been really confusing to me. What I think I understand is by creating this setup where you have your center of effort on a static picture looking directly at the boat, when you have that about 5% of the overall boat's length in front of the center of lateral resistance, that will make a relatively well-balanced boat that has a little bit of a weather helm. Is that right? Yeah, weather helm, as opposed to a lee helm. So when the wind blows stronger, the boat will tend to round up into the wind instead of fall off away from it. And that creates a more stable and controllable boat. And that's generally what people want, is a neutral or slight weather helm. The reason that this works is that as the boat is underway and when the real dynamics of sailing are at play, both the center of lateral resistance and the center of effort move forward. And the center of lateral resistance moves forward faster or farther than the center of effort does. So once you're actually moving, these 2 points end up at the same place, and then eventually the center of lateral resistance ends up in front of the center of effort, which then, if you get a really strong gust, will cause the boat to tend to round up into the wind. So as far as I can tell, that's typically how these boats are designed, or how boats are designed. And the distance between these 2 points is going to affect how hard it is to change course of the boat by moving the rudder. Basically, how much force you have to put into the rudder to change the direction of the boat. Now, what I want to turn this into is a cat catch. My main design goal here is I want a boat that is easy to single hand, that can be launched by one person without a lot of effort, and I want to be able to get to the boat launch and be in the water in under 20 minutes. So that means setting up the boat 5 or 10 minutes, launching the boat 5 or 10 minutes. I like cat catches for a lot of reasons. I won't bother going into that now. But one of the main things is it lets me shorten the masts so they'll be lighter, and I can put them on tabernacles so that they will hinge, and I can just fold them down so that they're fully rigged and ready, folded down, get there and just swing them up. They're also usually unstayed. That's a pretty big design goal here. So without any stays, there's not as much rigging to have to really deal with. So going through that, taking the exact existing design and not really changing it. Here I've got the water line and the deck at about the same position. They're a little bit off, but that's close enough. And this person is 6 feet tall, a little bit taller than me. But this just represents what would a person look like inside the boat. So if I don't change anything else about the hull, and I go ahead and add in 2 different sails, then I've got this cat catch design. You would typically be kind of sitting about where this person is and steering using the tiller extension. It's one thing I don't love about the mizzen, in a catch at least, is that steering's a little bit more awkward. So it seems like a wheel would be a better setup, but I want to stick with the simplicity. And what I have represented here are the size sails, which balance this boat out and give me pretty much the same center of effort, and the center of lateral resistance doesn't change because I'm not changing anything under the water line. So I have about the same CE, so this boat should theoretically perform pretty much the same as the Buccaneer, kind of out of the box, if you will. All my calculations are based on simple triangles, so I just represented the sails here as simple triangles, and in this configuration, these are the kind of optimal size sails, which will give me the most sail area. Now, one of the things that I stated that I'd like to do is add more freeboard, add about 10 inches of freeboard all around the boat. The primary reason for this is that it allows me to, well, actually, it does a couple of things. So it allows me to raise the deck up, which will then allow me to create a self-draining cockpit. Again, one of the problems that I have with this boat is it fills up with rainwater, and any water that leaks into it or splashes into it has to be bailed out manually or with a pump. So by lifting the deck up a little bit, I create a cavity down here where I can create additional storage. I can add water ballast tanks, which would slow this boat down and make it a little bit more comfortable to sail. I don't really need a fast racing boat, and I don't really need to go up on plane. But I could empty those water ballast tanks out and still have that available to me. So I really like the idea of water ballast tanks. I can also move them around if I need to change my center of lateral resistance or center of gravity, just to tune the boat to get it to perform a little bit better. But the main thing that I would get out of this is I would have a self-draining cockpit. And I'd have a little bit more of a sit on instead of sit in boat. You kind of, in the main boat, you sit really low, kind of down by the water. In this case, it'd be up a little higher, and it's maybe a little bit more comfortable. That may or may not be true. It'd also open up some more area in here where I could create some dry storage. You could throw your bag and some snacks and put in a little cooler or something like that. It's not really necessary, and it's kind of a lot of extra work. So now I'm second guessing whether or not I should actually add this additional space. But if I do, that has the added benefit of raising this mast up just a little bit higher so it can catch a little bit better wind. What I have drawn on this one are the actual sails that I have. So on the Buccaneer, I have the old jib. It's kind of torn up, it's pretty junky, but I can patch it up and it'll be good enough for testing and validating this design. So that's what this represents right here. This is pretty much the jib off of the stock Buccaneer. And then this is a sail that I have from another boat, but it's a little bit too small So I don't really use it that much. It's basically permanently reefed for that boat. But it's a really nice big sail. It's new. It's got a leech in it, so I get a little extra sail area. And it looks nice. Just kind of looks nicer to have something that's not just a pure triangle. Yeah, there's a few other things, but I think that's probably good enough. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. That's the approach. We now move into the spreadsheet and get to the really boring stuff.